My parents took his side without listening again, and I finally stopped explaining. I didn't yell, I didn't argue, I didn't even defend myself. For the first time in my life, I just stopped explaining, and somehow that hurt them more than anything I could have said. I grew up being the responsible one. You know, the role. The kid who remembers birthdays. The kid who doesn't cause problems. The kid who fixes problems. Meanwhile, my older brother had a different role. He was the one my parents called free-spirited, which is a nice way of saying he never planned ahead. He never took responsibility, and somehow nothing was ever his fault. If something went wrong, there was always a reason. A bad boss. A toxic friend group. A misunderstanding. Bad luck. My mistakes were choices. His mistakes were circumstances. That's just how it always worked. I spent most of my life thinking if I stayed patient enough, calm enough, successful enough, things would balance out eventually. Adults like to say that everything evens out when you grow up. It didn't. It just got more expensive. Last year, I finally bought my first home. Not huge, not fancy, but mine. I worked overtime for 3 years straight to afford the down payment. Skipped vacations, said no to weddings and trips and weekend plans. Signing those papers felt like oxygen after holding my breath for a decade. My parents told everyone how proud they were for about 2 weeks. Then the request started. My brother had been bouncing between apartments. After yet another unfair job situation, his lease was ending, and suddenly my parents had a brilliant solution. You have the extra room, my mom said casually. It wasn't a question, it was a conclusion they had already agreed on. I laughed because I thought they were joking. They weren't. I said no as gently as possible. I explained I had just gotten used to living alone. I explained I worked from home and needed the space. Quiet. I explained I wasn't comfortable mixing finances or housing with family. I explained everything because I always explain everything. Silence followed. Then came the disappointment. You're being selfish. He's family. He just needs a fresh start. You have the space. Not once did they ask how I felt, only why I wasn't saying yes. 2 weeks later, I came home from work and saw a car in my driveway. His car, I remember standing there for a full minute, trying to convince myself it was coincidence. It was my parents had given him a key without asking me. I walked inside and found boxes in my living room, shoes by the door, jacket on a chair, his voice in the kitchen like this was normal. He smiled and said surprise, like this was a sitcom entrance, like this was funny. I called my parents immediately. My mom answered already defensive. We knew you'd overreact if we told you first. Overreact to someone moving into my house without permission. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I told her he needed to leave. She sighed the way people sigh when they're tired of dealing with a difficult child. You're making this into a bigger deal than it is. That sentence changed something in me because it suddenly became clear that my words didn't matter. They had already decided the story. He needed help. I had space. End of discussion. Anything I said after that was just noise, and I had spent my entire life trying to be heard by people who weren't listening. So I stopped explaining. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just said okay. Then I hung up the next morning. I called a locksmith by noon. Every lock in the house had been changed. I packed his things carefully, neatly, respectfully stacked the boxes by the garage door. Then I texted my parents. His stuff is ready for pickup. The phone call started within minutes. Missed call, missed call, missed call. Then the texts. You're being cruel. This isn't how family treats each other. He has nowhere to go. How could you do this without talking to us first? Without talking to them first? I stared at that message for a long time. And for the first time in my life, I didn't write a paragraph back. I didn't justify. I didn't explain. I didn't defend. I sent one sentence. You didn't talk to me first. Either they picked up his boxes that night. No one came to the door. No one knocked. The garage camera showed them loading everything into their car in silence. It felt strangely peaceful. Like the moment after a storm when the air finally stops shaking. It's been a month now. My parents say they don't recognize me anymore. They say I've changed. They say I've become cold. Maybe they're right, but the truth is I didn't become cold. I just stopped trying to melt. For people who were never going to meet me halfway, and for the first time in my life, my home actually feels like mine. Quiet, calm, safe, no explanations required. Did I go too far by changing the locks without warning? Should I have kept explaining until they understood? Or is there a point where you just stop talking and start protecting your peace? What would you have done in my situation?